Hi guys. My name is James Morgan. Um, I'm doing chapter 9 for this presentation. It's all about sort of digital marketing and digital advertising and how that affects us and businesses in sort of this day and age. In 9.1, we just see an introduction, sort of what we see throughout the chapter. So we're going to be looking at sort of the ethical side of digital marketing and advertising and how this type of advertising is really blown up and it's become just the largest form of advertising across the world for large organizations, small organizations, and how it sort of affects us. We're also going to look at sort of how advertising has become way more specific to consumers and how much sort of information businesses have on us and how they can use that to target us and market specific products that we would be inclined to buy. And also how deception is used, how to lure customers in, how these businesses do it fairly or unfairly, and how sort of the government keeps control on that. So in 9.2, we look at the ethics of manipulation and deception. So many organizations and businesses use manipulation tactics that help persuade and pursue customers into sort of buying what they're selling. They use this, from use our information from social media and from Google searches, things like that. Anything online, they use that information that we give to target you specifically and sort of manipulate you in the sense that they will put products in your face that appeal to you and end up making money off you based on your spending habits. Many companies are often also accused of taking advantage of vulnerable communities and people and exposing their insecurities for their own profitable gain. These types of people can be young, old, or sick. And as later on in the chapter, they talk about the vulnerable, but these people can't really make decisions for themselves, and especially young people and really old people, and that's where businesses try and take advantage. And looking back at the previous chapters, we see that Kantian ethics would have a real strong objection to this sort of practice, but on the other hand, utilitarianism would offer much more conditional critique and would try and see both sides. So in 9.3, we look at the government regulation of the deceptive and unfair advertising. So unfair advertising is something that is not uncommon, and we do see large corporations use these techniques and false advertisement to help, push their products and sell their products. In the chapter in 9.3 especially, we see the example of Johnson & Johnson, how they produced Tylenol and they branded their Tylenol as that they were the number one pain relief medication that was used within hospitals, which was completely false. So you can see what sort of type of what businesses do to to entice customers and just to sell their products and make money. They don't really care how. They just want to make money, and that's where the ethical side of things comes into play. And what makes this so tricky is that it's there's no real sort of precise rule or regulation that that helps the FTC know or define deception. So it's really just at the discretion of the person looking into it, and there's no it's really not that black and white. Some companies get away with this sort of deceptive, unfair advertising of products. In 9.4, we look at digital marketing and consumer privacy. So consumer privacy is something that is blown up in our society. We all have cell phones, we all have tablets, iPads, laptops, things like that, and all the information we put into these devices, businesses can see and build up a digital profile of you and what you like to buy. So they have all our private information, and that's something that is quite scary for me. I think having all that information can be dangerous, and you never know who can get their hands on it. We also see that companies sell on other information to sort of third parties. So companies will take your information and give it to other companies and other organizations. And I don't know. I don't know how ethical that is. A lot of information is personal, and again, like I said, in the wrong hands, you never know what can happen. We also see that large companies do not use the best sort of encryption to protect against data breaches and things like that. So at the bottom there, I have a document or an article linked about, it was this year in July, I think, where LinkedIn had a data breach and over 700 million people's information was breached. And to me, LinkedIn is quite a media platform that's quite professional, business orientated, lots of information on there, and you can only imagine that what type of information people got their hands on. And I think companies maybe should be held accountable for that, but they're trying to maximize profit and keep costs down, and if they can keep costs down by using not the best encryption stuff, then they're going to do it. So our consumer privacy these days it isn't very private. In 9.5, we look at sort of market ethics and consumer autonomy, and this is something that I found really interesting reading about actually. But we see two arguments, and one argument is saying that marketing has no effect on our consumer autonomy, whereas others feel like it shapes our society and influences almost everything we do. I would argue, or I would sort of lean on the second side of things. I think marketing has a massive effect on what we buy, and I think to say that we're not influenced and we just make decisions on what we buy and what we purchase from our own decisions, I think is naive. I think marketing plays a massive role in what we buy and what we do in our society now. So the second argument would violate Kantian ethics, as respect for persons is the central element, and having wants does not line up with that. And at the bottom here, it says advertising controls consumer behaviour and consumer autonomy is making reasoned voluntary choices. And I feel like making reasoned voluntary choices is taken away from marketing, and I think a lot of people would agree with me in that. I know that when I'm buying things, I'm influenced by what people are wearing or what companies are advertising or what's the latest trends and what's this, and I think large parts of our society is influenced by that. And in 9.6, we see that targeting the vulnerable and the marketing sales of the vulnerable, and like I talked on earlier, businesses they often target vulnerable communities because they know they're going to get sales out of them, and they know they're easy to persuade, I guess. They usually go through physiological motivations such as fear and guilt, which really means that they're appealing to your emotional side rather than giving facts and figures and not giving you the bottom line and the truth. So when we talk about vulnerability, there's a vulnerability to normal society and what if you're vulnerable, what you're classed as and what you're seen as. But here I also have the definition of being a vulnerable consumer, and that is not being able to participate in fully informed as a voluntary participant in the market exchange, which effectively means you cannot make clear-cut decisions for yourself. Like many elderly people, like many sick people, like many young, really young people, they are making emotional decisions when it comes to buying things, and that's why they're seen as vulnerable communities, and why businesses target them so often. At the bottom here, I have another article, and it's about vulnerable populations being targeted by tobacco companies, and how they exploit vulnerable people that maybe are addicted, for their profitable gain. So the discussion questions I have here are, I think, ones that are pretty good and can create good conversation. So the first one is, do you think it is right that businesses and organizations should be allowed to forward personal information to third parties? Personally, I don't think they should be able to, but I guess that's the world we live in. And information is so widespread right now that it's very difficult, I guess, to go back on that. The second one is, should groups of people that are classed as vulnerable be protected from unethical marketing from large companies? Just like the article in the previous slide from tobacco companies, people that are, or maybe people that are alcoholics from alcohol companies, should these people have protection from these companies targeting them and marketing at them, and should they be protected? Should they have extra protection from, say, government or whatever it might be? And does advertising, in your opinion, remove our consumer anatomy, or does it have zero effect? I think it does. Marketing does, advertising does remove our consumer anatomy, but I guess everyone has their own opinion. But I think we're largely influenced by what we see and what's put in front of us, and I think a lot of us make spending and buying habits of those adverts or marketing processes. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. Thanks again. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much.